Greetings, history lovers. Today we embark on one of history's most persistent and debated questions. Why did the Western Roman Empire fall? It's an event that marked a before and after for Western history. For centuries, Rome transformed from a small city on the Tiber to the most successful imperial power in human history, encompassing much of Europe, North Africa, and Western Asia. The official date we usually remember is 476 AD, with the deposition of the last Western emperor, Romulus Augustulus. However, as good historians, we know that history is rarely that simple. The fall of Rome did not occur for a single reason, but due to a series of events and crises that, over time, led to the disintegration of the empire. It was a prolonged process, with causes that had been festering almost since the very birth of Imperial Rome. Today, we will unravel the main internal and external causes, and explore the profound consequences that marked the beginning of a new era, the Middle Ages. Ready to unearth the truth behind the fall of Rome? Then let's begin. Before we dive in, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single episode that uncovers history's most fascinating stories. The problems of the Roman Empire truly intensified in the 3rd century AD, a period known as the imperial crisis or anarchy of the 3rd century. It was a time of profound changes and transformations, where the old was questioned but did not disappear entirely, instead transforming into something new. Imagine an empire plunged into brutal political instability. Emperor Commodus's death sparked a terrible civil war. Later, the military monarchy of the Severans degenerated into military anarchy. In just 50 years, 22 emperors ruled Rome, and the vast majority died violently. The armies, once a pillar of Rome, became anarchic, installing and removing rulers at will. This severely weakened the state. This internal instability was mercilessly exploited by external rivals. In the east, the Sasanian Persians attacked Roman territory and even captured and executed Emperor Valerian, an unprecedented event. At the same time, Germanic peoples like the Goths launched offensives on the Balkans, Greece, and Asia Minor, while the Franks advanced on Gaul and the Iberian Peninsula. The economy suffered a devastating blow. Unleashed hyperinflation devalued the currency, losing intrinsic value with each minting due to the reduction of gold and silver content. This crippled much of trade. Cities began to depopulate as people sought security in the countryside, accelerating a process of ruralization. Although emperors like Aurelian, Diocletian, and Constantine managed to temporarily restore order and implement reforms, Rome would never be the same again. Beyond the obvious crises, Rome harbored structural problems that gnawed at it from within. One of the most critical was, undoubtedly, its colossal size. The empire was so vast that in the western part it had extended over much of the European continent, as well as North Africa and the territories adjacent to the Adriatic Sea. At its peak, the Roman Empire spanned 3 continents and 5 million square kilometers, including the territory of 40 current nations. Governing it, administering justice, and collecting taxes in such a vast entity, where communications were carried out on the back of a beast, was a titanic task, and, in the long run, impossible to keep politically united. This territorial immensity led to political instability among its rulers, and made defending its extensive borders difficult. Provinces gained increasing autonomy, and Rome's authority as a center diminished. Added to this was widespread corruption. As historian Edward Gibbon points out, bribery and corruption were major factors in Rome's fall. From the selling of citizen votes in the Roman Forum to judicial rulings and construction contracts, everything was for sale. Even the free grain distributions for the needy, organized by the government to prevent famine, were a source of fraud where many feigned poverty. Lucius Licinius Crassus, a close associate of Julius Caesar, became rich by buying burning houses at bargain prices, delaying the arrival of his fire services to negotiate advantageously. This administrative route extended to the army. Social inequalities were also abysmal. A rich and opulent caste coexisted with an impoverished peasantry, and an urban population barely subsisting. Slave labor, while a source of wealth during expansion, later destabilized the economy by displacing salaried workers and generating unmanageable economic turbulence. The adoption of the colonnadist system, with former slaves tied to the land, further marginalized trade. Faced with immensity, political instability, and the growing difficulty of defending its vast borders, a monumental decision was made that would change the course of history. During the reign of Emperor Theodosius I, Rome was divided into two parts, East and West. Upon Theodosius' death in 395 AD, the empire was formally divided, leaving the west to Honorius and the east to Arcadius. The capital of the Western Roman Empire was established in Milan, later Ravenna, while that of the Eastern Roman Empire was Constantinople, the ancient Byzantium of the Greeks, renamed by Constantine I in 338. This division was intended to make the vast territories more manageable, but it would soon generate rivalries and an inability to coordinate against external threats. The two factions had different interests and perspectives. The Western Roman Empire suffered repeated invasions and the flight of peasants to cities. Its rulers had exhausted much of their credit with their subjects. On the other hand, the Eastern Roman, or Byzantine, Empire was in a clear position of advantage. Its strategic geographic location, strong army, and vibrant economy, boosted by active trade as the starting point of the Silk Road, allowed it to prosper. Furthermore, it was less pressured by barbarians, and its economic administration was more competent, avoiding the continuous financial crises that plagued the West. While Latin persisted in the West, Greek became the official language in the East, marking a growing cultural divide. This divergence would seal the fate of the West, while Byzantium would survive for almost 1,000 more years. One of the most controversial and debated causes is the role of Christianity. Could a religion, which promised liberation and taught equality, contribute to the fall of an empire? The question is fascinating and complex, and as historians, we must approach it objectively. Initially, Christianity was especially popular among the lower classes and women, offering hope and valuing all human life. Unlike traditional Roman religion, which didn't care much for the lives of newborns. However, its absolutist nature, which recognized only the power of a single God and not that of the state, generated tensions with Roman authorities, often resulting in persecutions. But in 312 AD, Emperor Constantine put it on equal footing after his victory at the Battle of Milvian Bridge, and in 384 AD, under Theodosius, Christianity officially became the state religion of the Roman Empire. While some argue that successful Christian emperors like Justinian and Basil II demonstrated that religious fervor could even increase martial vigor, other historians point out that Christianity did contribute to the decline in other ways. Christian intolerance towards paganism led to violent clashes and increasing social polarization, weakening cohesion at a critical time of barbarian invasions. For example, Christian fanatics stormed the Serapeum of Alexandria in 392 AD, destroying statues and temples, the last attempt to restore paganism under Emperor Julian failed. Furthermore, it is argued that Christianity may have led to a reduction in new army recruits, as many preferred an ecclesiastical career as monks or priests, and a decrease in birth rates due to Christian women's religious vows of chastity. Although not the sole cause, it is certainly correct to say that it did contribute in some way to the fall. While Rome had fought barbarian tribes on its borders for centuries in Gaul, Germania, and Eastern Europe, the nature of these interactions changed dramatically, becoming an unstoppable force that eroded the empire's borders. The most serious problems began in the 3rd century. By the end of the 4th century, a new wave of Germanic tribes, terrified by the advance of the Huns from the plains of Eurasia under the fearsome Attila, were forced to move towards the empire's borders. Romans called those who did not share their religion and culture barbarians, and these peoples began to invade various territories in the west. Among the most prominent were the Visigoths, Franks, Ostrogoths, Vandals, Alans, and Suebi. A turning point was the Battle of Adrianople in 378 AD, where the Visigoths, mistreated by Roman officials after having requested permission to settle in the Balkans, rebelled and catastrophically defeated the Roman army, killing Emperor Valens. But perhaps the most symbolic event, which shattered the empire's aura of eternity and invincibility, was the sacking of Rome by the Visigothic king Alaric in 410 AD. Although it was relatively mild in terms of destruction, the psychological impact was devastating, constituting a point of no return. The city, which had been considered impregnable, was desecrated. Invasions continued relentlessly. The Vandals, led by Gaiseric, crossed the Strait of Gibraltar and founded a kingdom in North Africa, from where they sacked Rome in 455. The Anglo-Saxons invaded Britannia, and the Franks and Burgundians raided Gaul. The Western Empire was no longer able to defend itself against this constant pressure. The army, once the envy of the world and the backbone of the empire, that invincible Roman army that reached maximum levels of organization and warfare tactics, became one of the main causes of its collapse. It weakened to such an extent that it became incapable of controlling the barbarian invasions. During the centuries of splendor, it was an honor to be a legionary, and only Roman citizens could serve. However, as Rome entered its decline, it became difficult to recruit enough citizens. This led to a growing reliance on mercenaries and, crucially, on Germanic peoples settled within the empire, known as foederati. The Goths, for example, supplied the imperial army. They were fierce warriors, yes, but their loyalty to Rome was non-existent or very volatile. And their indiscipline clashed head-on with the glorious Roman military tradition of generals like Julius Caesar or Scipio. Imagine this. Many of the barbarians who sacked Rome and contributed to its fall had earned their military stripes serving in the Roman legions themselves. They knew the empire's tactics, weaknesses, and geography from the inside. This internalization of the enemy was a fatal paradox. The Romans accepted the Visigoths into the Balkans in exchange for troops for their army. But mistreatment by Roman military leaders led to their brutal rebellion and defeat at Adrianople. The growing influence of military generals, many of whom controlled more power than the emperors themselves, coupled with the lack of resources to maintain a loyal army, eroded Rome's ability to defend itself. The once perfect military machine was rusty and fragmented, a reflection of a decaying empire. With all these causes converging, corruption, inequalities, political instability, a weakened army, barbarian pressure, and the impact of Christianity, the end was inevitable for the Western Empire. The final blow would come in 476 AD. In that fateful year, a Germanic leader, the chieftain Odoacer, occupied the Italian peninsula and deposed the last Western emperor, Romulus Augustulus. It's an event loaded with profound symbolism. An emperor bearing the name of Rome's mythical founder Romulus, and of the first emperor, Augustus, being overthrown by a barbarian. Although Romulus was an usurper and not recognized as a legitimate ruler by the Eastern Emperor, his deposition is universally considered the definitive end of an era in the history of Roman civilization. The empire of Augustus, Mark Antony, Marcus Aurelius, and Constantine was extinguished. The fall of the Western Roman Empire had profound immediate consequences. The settlement of the former Roman territory by Germanic tribes led to the birth of independent kingdoms, ruled by hereditary monarchs. The centralization of power in Rome gave way to a dispersion of power centers throughout Europe, controlled by Visigoths, Ostrogoths, Franks, Burgundians, Germans, Anglo-Saxons, and Danes. These peoples and territories would later form some of today's European nationalities. Economically, the slave system was progressively replaced by feudalism. The relationship of subordination to the emperor mutated into vassalage to a feudal lord. An effective power came to be exercised by an aristocracy of nobles. The fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 AD conventionally marks the end of antiquity and the beginning of the Middle Ages. This was a turning point that completely reshaped Europe. Culturally, the displacement of classical culture by Christian and Islamic precepts was paramount. But let's remember, the Roman Empire did not entirely disappear. The Eastern Roman, or Byzantine, Empire continued to exist for almost 1,000 more years, until it was conquered by the Ottoman Turks in 1453. Under emperors like Justinian I, 527 to 565, Byzantium experienced a period of splendor, with attempts to reconquer territories. The compilation of the Justinian Code that laid the foundations of law in Europe, and the construction of architectural wonders like the Hagia Sophia. Its resilience, vibrant trade via the Silk Road, and economic and military strength made it a bastion against the expansion of Islam into Western Europe. The true reason for Rome's fall is a mosaic of complex factors, a testament that great historical events and processes never have a single cause. As historians, we understand that no empire is immune to change, and that the ambition for power, corruption, and poor administration have historically been the great causes of the falls of great nations and empires. If this journey through Rome's history has been as fascinating to you as it has been to me, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future historical explorations. Until next time, historians.